Welcome to this evening's Love and Poetry podcast with your host, Sean Garvey and Sha'ria Thomas, right here on Beat Break 87 FM, Reach One Network, and on the Podcast FM app. You can listen to us online, listen live at beatbreakradiofm.com. I have Sha'ria Thomas with me. Good evening, Sha'ria Thomas. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Sean. Good evening. How are you?
I am doing good. Glad that you are back. I know you had to take some time off from our last episode, but what you been up to lately over the past couple of days?
What have I been up to? It's
Yes.
been work for me, a lot of work. And yeah, I've really been actually focusing on getting a new project together in terms of music. But, for my day job, it's always
Mhm.
about helping people, whether it's for my life coaching or counseling clients. So, a combination of that along with family keeps me totally busy.
Yeah,
How about
yeah,
for
I
you?
definitely understand that. We are all multi-taskers here, especially in the line of profession that we are in media, broadcasting, entertainment industry, and etc. So I definitely can relate to that. My week has been okay so far, adjusting to this new Apple phone, or actually this iPhone that I recently got. So I am both an Android user and an iPhone user, Shari, for the very first time.
Join the club, yes.
Yo, join the club.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more about it on the Deep Break Morning Show. But hey, Shari, we got a great topic, a great show for our listeners this evening. But before we get into that, I want to do a recap from the previous episode that we did here on Love and Poetry Podcast. And we had singer-songwriter Dominique live with me on the live line to talk about life after marriage. You know, she recently got divorced and went through a lot: mental health,
Mm-hmm.
physical, emotionally, spiritually, you name it.
Wow.
And she is doing a lot better. We keep tabs with each other because we known each other from years ago when I was working at another AM station in Atlanta. And
Yes.
she wants me to let the people know that are listening right now that she is still doing great. She is still living her best life. But I thought it was a very great episode, and we received comments from listeners that actually tuned into the podcast. Sharia, we had one. I cannot make out her username, but she decided to comment on the previous episode on IG at Beat Break Radio and at Sean Garvey ATL. She said that I was totally devastated when my husband left me because of the big mistake I made. He left me for over 2 years, but to happiness, I saw a post about at Dr. Ogiselle, I believe that's what it's called, Natural Powers. I reached to him about my marital issues, and he helped me to restore my marriage in a few days. Wow, that's a very powerful
That's
testimony,
beautiful.
Sharia.
That definitely is.
I'm glad that we are able to be the source to reach out to listeners and to touch listeners as well too, with some of the commentary and the guests we have had on the podcast so far. We talked about the marriage life with your parents not too long ago, and then of course we had a fellow podcaster by the name of DJ Robinson talking about this dating app life, which is still out of control in my personal opinion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and fast forward to now, we are talking about exes and moving on, Sharia. Everybody on this live line, including you and I, had some past with an ex that we had trouble getting over. Am I right, or am I wrong?
Yes, and I wouldn't even say trouble getting over. It was just a part of the grief process, which is natural, normal, that when you love someone, when you truly are in love with someone and you give them you, that is only natural to experience what some may see as mental health, which it is, because you can become depressed,
Mm-hmm.
all type of emotions. So yeah, I'm with you. It's grief.
Yeah.
It's the grief process.
And it is so relatable. I can definitely relate to that. But I want to bring on a listener who actually caught some of the episodes that we aired recently. And she was just so moved by the last episode that we did with Dominique. I decided to bring her on to tonight's podcast. And believe it or not, Sha'ria, before we started tonight's episode, me and this young lady that I'm getting ready to bring on with us, we had a very candid conversation about my current situation with my ex. Yeah. And this really gave me the idea to just be like, we got to do an episode on this, because this is all about love and relationships, and our main purpose is for people to grow out of an old relationship and make themselves better as they are getting ready to go into a new relationship. So I want to reiterate tonight's topic once again. We're talking about getting over your ex and making time for someone new. We all have busy schedules. I got a busy schedule. You got a busy schedule, Sha'ria. And, you know, can you make time when you are ready to move on? And so here on the Love and Poetry podcast is now a great friend of mine, and she goes by the name of Calishea. Calishea, good evening. Welcome to Love and Poetry.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Oh, we are doing great. We're doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing good. Doing good. Can't complain.
Good. Well, we're glad that you are on the Love and Poetry podcast. And we like to just bring everyday people. They don't necessarily have to be celebrities or people of major influence to be on the podcast, but we want to hear everyday people that are going through relationships or just came out of a relationship or are currently in a relationship to share testimonial stories of how they overcame some form of grief, like Sha'ria said a few moments ago, from a past relationship, and now they are in a new relationship or what have you. So I want to ask you this before we go any further, Calishea. Now, are you in a current relationship right now?
So actually, I just got out of a 2-year relationship, and definitely have some growing pains. So just to answer your question, no, I'm not in a relationship, but I recently just got out of a 2-year relationship.
Wow.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, the feeling is just like I can't. I hate to say the word hate, but it's just like I hate that feeling of, you know, because we as humans, we do have feelings, and it's something that we can't control, but it's just like something that we go through. So it's just like the everyday constant reminder of anything that you do, the memory out or the memory that you share with that individual. It's like, man, I don't want to go through this. I wish it'll end and stuff like that. So, but at the end of the day, we were both amicable and come to the fact that, you know, we can be cordial around each other and still be friends and still somewhat hang out and check on one another. But I don't like to leave relationships on a bad note. I always like to leave relationships on a, you know, positive energy, because, you know, you never know. You may reconnect with that individual, or maybe they're going to just continue to be friends. So, yeah.
Wow, I can definitely relate, because I told you previously that I was in a 2-year relationship as well, which led to the point of where I experienced mental health. There was a lot of emotions involved, a lot of energy involved, a lot of time, of course, involved in my 2-year relationship. And so coming from out of that, like, are you, if you don't mind me by asking, do you still have feelings for your ex, or do you look at your ex differently nowadays?
Honestly, I don't look at him any different. Of course, my feelings are still there, because it was just like, man, this is the guy that I really wanted to be with. You know, if it was just, I want to say the reason why it didn't work out, because we weren't on the same, we were imbalanced in a way, because it was just like, if we were both on one accord, I think we would have been married by now, or at least engaged, you know, or possibly starting a family and stuff. Because I'm very traditional. I'm all about getting married first, and then, enjoying my husband, and then eventually, starting a family. But, it just didn't work out. But, I still communicate with them and everything in hopes of, maybe possibly one day my feelings just growing back stronger as they were in the beginning. But I guess I just need that space to, figure out what I want to do. But it's just like, I don't want to try to disrupt something, if it's not there, and just let it be. So.
Yeah. Before I go to Sha'ria, go ahead, Sha'ria.
Go ahead, Sean. I don't want
No,
to.
I was gonna ask Calishea, like when you say that both parties, you and your ex, you all were not on the same page. Was it pertaining to the economic aspect or the ambitions aspect? What were you all not on the same page, if you don't mind us asking?
When it came to being in a relationship, honestly, because it was like when he first pursued me, it was back in 2019. I wasn't, all with it. But when I finally gave him my number months later, we started to communicate all day, every day. And then I've always said, like, I'm not gonna let my feelings go strong for this guy because he was once engaged before, and with being engaged, of course your feelings will still be there for your ex, but he wanted to become the better version of himself before he got in a relationship with me. But as we were talking all day, every day, it was just to the point, like, my feelings started to develop for him. And, I was hoping, one day he'll finally ask me to be his girlfriend and stuff like that. But it was just like after a year later, my feelings started to shift because I didn't see a change in that relationship. Or, so that year I was ready. And then the next year when he was finally ready and when he moved on from the situation, he was ready, but I wasn't. So that's kind of like an imbalance to me, that seemed like we couldn't be on one accord about, being in a relationship, because my feelings shifted and his feelings started to grow even stronger for me then. So it was just kind of like a teeter-totter situation. So it sucked. But we'll still be the best of friends. But maybe one day, hopefully down the line, we may reconnect, or maybe not. But I always just hope for the best, though.
Yeah, right. Sha'ria.
Thank you for sharing that, Calishea. I am a little curious. Of course, when we're in a relationship, and like you said, when it's imbalanced, it's what I always take for myself, and even with clients, is each person can learn something from it and be able to understand it to even build on and grow from and take it to the next relationship. So with you saying that with this past ex that you're friends with, and making it more that you all have a amicable relationship now, I'm curious as to the start of it. Were you all just friends that first year, or what was it? To where was it just an ambiguity where you said you were ready but he wasn't ready? What was the status? Was that even communicated in that first year of you all being together?
I think I want to say that the communication was a little bit off in the beginning of what he wanted, because very, sure and open and honest about, what I wanted. But we were hanging around each other in the beginning, knowing the fact that he was engaged, and I was alerted of that. So I don't want to be in no type of mess like that, because, it's to the point like where guys are always hurt, still hurt over the ex and stuff like that. So why be a void filler for them? But during the time, I just started to think, I feel like a void filler, but I brought it to his attention, and he was on the terms like, no, I don't feel like that. That's not you, and stuff like that. But I'm like, these are my feelings and this is how I'm feeling. But Sha'ria, I've never been this type of female to put myself in a situation and let it prolong this long, because I guess my feelings were just very, very strong for this man. And I've never situation. I feel like that I don't want to put myself in a situation again. Like I say that I'm ready to move on, but when an opportunity come where I do meet somebody, it's just like, nah, I'm a little bit reserved now. Because maybe now, I may need to put myself on reserve. I am available, but maybe on reserve and focus on me, because definitely I do want, a husband, a family and stuff like that as well. But it's just like, I barely go anywhere out to meet anybody, because I like to meet people organically out, out and about and stuff. So yeah, we met actually at my job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And let me also say this too. I'm in my 30s, and I look at relationships totally different than when I was in my 20s. I can relate to that part of what you're saying, Calishea. I know when I was in my 20s, I wasn't really looking into being in a committed relationship. Have I been in a committed relationship when I was younger? Absolutely, yes, but I didn't put much effort into the committed relationship because in my 20s, I was still looking at other women. I wasn't in that state of mind that I am in now. And so at age 37, going on 38, knocking on wood, 40, you look at relationships totally different than you did when you was in your 20s. I mean, would you say that would be fair? Like for you, you said that you wanted a family, you want to start a family, you want to have a husband, but what was that mindset always there when you was in like your early 20s and in your teens? Was that mindset always there for you, Calishea, or did it just kind of like happen all so sudden, especially in the 2-year relationship that you was in with your ex?
Well, I say the twins belong to me. When I say belong to me, I'm trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was solely focused on in my career, because I guess I was kind of like thinking like a man, because I wanted to build a foundation, have my career first and then find my mate, because I don't want to go in a relationship and not already established. But understand, things don't happen when you want it to happen. But I'm from Mississippi. I'm from a small town. Being Mississippi is like more traditional, because you always get those questions asked, like, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna have kids? That was always in the back of my on my ear, because that's all what you saw in Mississippi: people starting families, people getting married, and stuff like that. It just wasn't so more so career driven people. So that's why I had to branch out and figure out what I wanted to do. And maybe that'll definitely come later, because I've always said I definitely want to get married and stuff like that, because once I get well established, I would definitely want to eventually start, having something like that. But yeah, those 20s, I mean, I was thinking that's always been in the back of my mind. And being a woman, that's something that you always want to think about, that you always think about as well. Right. When you found your dreams, how will you know and stuff, like how will you be when you get married and everything. But yeah, that's always like the main question. Oh, where's your boyfriend? Or when you gonna start having kids and stuff. So, but yeah.
And yeah, Calishea, I would agree with you in terms of, especially with males and females, we are raised differently. The culture in which we're brought up, how we're trained is differently. So as women, we are already geared towards family,
Yes.
being married, versus for men, and you can speak to that too, Sean, that it's different, and it's more honorable or more acceptable to live that single life.
Yeah.
Even personally for myself, I married early and was married throughout my 20s and 30s. And that was what I wanted. And making that transition from ending a marriage to starting over, and you being in that space of where you are ending a relationship, it's only normal of looking at what do you want moving forward next time. Because what I hear is, in terms of even communication level, what would you like to see differently looking at your ex versus this new relationship that you would like to see? That we can go by an ideal, we do at least have to have a vision first. What would you do differently that helps you to move on and know that you are going to a healthier and a relationship that makes you happy, contributes to your happiness as well, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely communications is number one key, because with my ex, we didn't have the best communication. It was horrible in the beginning, when I tell you. But learning and understanding each other, being supportive, because what I grew up in, like, an abusive household, where, because I've been single, for a couple of years, and because I've always thought all men beat women, hit them, because that's what I grew up on. So I'm like, if this is how a relationship's supposed to be, I definitely don't want to be with nobody, because I always never let guys pass the friendship zone for me, because I've always thought of them, of what I saw in my home when I was growing up. I was on reserve for a long time, never let nobody in. My guard was always up, but it totally changed me, because it's just like, I'm to the point, like, I'm too damn old, to be still feeling like this from childhood, and it's still affecting me. But I think, when it came to us, it was like definitely communication, and actually just listening, being a listening ear for your partner, and just start off the relationship with honesty, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's the main key factors for me. And I know that I can share a little bit more, but like communication, being open, and starting it off with honesty.
Most definitely. Those are some key ingredients to having. So, and I say that so you can, you're at a place where in moving forward, because like Sean is saying, it can be that process of grieving that old relationship. It takes time, and it's different. That time frame is different for many. But taking those elements that did not work and seeing of what you would like to see differently. The fact of just, I want to touch on one thing that you talked about in terms of, you're too old, of what you experienced when you were a child, and growing up in an abusive household. But we're never too old of what we experience, and we never heal from it. And so what you experienced was trauma. And in some ways, that can even create, like you said, that guard, which is a protection. So you don't want that to happen to you. So even some ways of holding back, therefore, because of fear of being hurt or experiencing a repeat, excuse me, of what you may have seen or experienced. And so being able to even allow yourself to heal from that. I say that because, again, if we're looking at getting over your ex, we do want to process our pain and our grief, because we can carry that over into our next relationship. And so there might be a lot of elements that the ex may have done, but we also need to look at ourselves too, and look at, well, what did I do, or what didn't I do?
Right.
I take myself into the new relationship. So what is it that I might need to change so it doesn't repeat, and it's the same pattern, same situation, but different person?
Right.
Most definitely. So even giving yourself that time and space, that's a beautiful thing. That's a great thing to do.
Yeah,
We all
definitely.
Yeah. And Sha'ria, I know you heard me say, as soon as Calishea said communication. And that's what I've been struggling with quite some time. And I'm glad we segue into this part of the conversation. For those who are just tuning in, you are listening to Love and Poetry with Sean Garvey and Sha'ria Thomas, a professional life coach and licensed therapist. We also have a loyal listener now. She is a new citizen to Love and Poetry podcast, Calishea. And we're talking about getting over your ex and making time for something new. Communication. I've been thinking long and hard about this, Sha'ria and Calishea, that communication, I don't know, and maybe it's just me, because I've been thinking long and hard about communication, and it just seems like communication is not the key to a lot of people that I encounter. It's like now we living in this technology age, which we are, because, you know, we do internet radio, we on social media all the time. And a lot of times we allow technology to talk for us. I remember back in the day, all you had to do was just pick up the phone and talk to that person, talk to that loved one, talk to that person that you have a crush on or that you interested in. Now it's just all about texting. It's just texting and DMing and stuff. And I share this with Calishea because me and Calishea, we had this conversation prior to us having this platform that we have right now tonight on this Sunday evening. The trouble that I'm having in the dates that I have been on recently is the communication. At the end of the day, I'm the type of person that's going to be transparent with you and vice versa. I will want the reciprocal back because I need to know if you are serious about taking whatever we have going on further, so that way I would know in my mind that I'm on the same page with you. You know what I mean? But it just seems like with regarding communication, is ghosting involved. You could be on a date with somebody that you really, really like, you all having a great time. And then the next day you don't hear from that person. And then you be the one to reach out to that person just to see how they doing or if everything's okay. And they give you short answers in a text. And you try to make time to talk to that person over the phone and that person doesn't want to give you the time. You know what I mean? And that causes me, and I'm guilty of it, I will admit. Sometimes I think about my ex because of the recent situations that I've been in with women that I've dated who didn't make the time to communicate with me, but they're the same ones that put themselves out there as if they are available. And it causes me to think about my ex on a regular, because when I was with my ex, it was communication all the time. Whether it was texting, email, DM, phone call, it was all of that. And that's very hard for me. Let's say you, like, when you're, Calishea, this question is for you. Calishea, when you're in the dating scene or whenever you put yourself in the dating scene, what kind of communication do you require when you come across a person that you really, really like? You know, I mean, I know we're in this technology age that we're living in right now, but what kind of communication you require that will make you be like, okay, this person, I want to see where this goes?
It has to be very natural. It's just like, I like those type of communications where it's just like, when you say like, dang, I feel like I know you. So I like that type of communication with the guy that's just like that, because I want to tell you about a situation. So 2 weekends ago, me and my friend, we celebrated her birthday. We stayed at the Battery. And so we were just out one night, and the guy, he stopped me, and it was just like, he gave me his whole resume. I said, stop, this is not an interview. I didn't or anything. I didn't ask for none of this. I know everything about him, and he knows little of me. So I'm like, you don't have to give me your whole resume because I didn't ask us. So stuff like that. It's just like, it's too much. I don't know if, they're nervous and they just want to portray everything out to you. But I like natural, honest communication. It's just like, that easily flows.
Natural communication, organic communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know up front what kind of car you drive or how much you make at your job. I don't want to know all of that. I think we still live under the umbrella of titles and labels to make ourselves feel validated and to impress the person that we're talking to. And I'm just so beyond that point of telling a woman or whoever I encounter about what I do for a living, unless I'm being asked. Like, I know that's one of the first few questions that a lot of women ask guys, what do you do and what have you. I don't tend to be overzealous like I was in the past, because I will admit I was overzealous about telling people, oh, I'm the hardest working man in radio.
Mhm.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yes,
But
word.
I was also asking Calishea prior to this, what makes you happy? What makes you happy at this point, especially coming out of a long-term relationship? To me, 2 years is pretty good length of time for both of us. And now you find yourself in the single life. You feel lonely at times. You want to be with somebody. You have all these things. You have a nice career, a nice job, a great house. You eating good. You still have that great family support system, but you're still unhappy. And to me, happiness to me is just not only having a good career and being around great people and what have you, but spending time with the person that you love, making time for that person that you love. To me, that's what makes me happy. What makes you happy at this point, especially coming out of the two relationship that you was previously in?
Just pretty much just focusing on me. And, for a long time, I didn't get what people say, just focus on you. I'm like, I've been doing it the whole time, even in the relationship. So I still act as independent in the relationship as well. But what makes me happy is just spending time by myself, just being lazy and catching up on reality shows, for the mean. Be happy for right now, and just trying to get myself together, honestly. And then of course, being with my family, that's another thing that makes me happy. But for right after relationship, just spending time by myself, and or somewhat with my friends. But pretty much I'm just a loner.
You're just a loner, just like me.
For
And
now.
Calishea cleared it. She said that, hey, what makes me happy is just being to myself, focusing on my career. Why do you think, Sha'ria, there are people out there with lonely hearts like myself and like a lot of our listeners that are tuning in? Why do you feel like they are just very depressed and miserable because they don't have that person with them, especially in the pandemic that we still in? We've seen a lot of relationships fail and dissolve during COVID-19, but now, people are still breaking up, feeling depressed, going through mental health issues. Why do you think that is the case?
Why do I think that people are still depressed after a breakup?
Yeah.
And even if it's been time, it's because they are stuck in a phase of their grief. And so being in depression, like I said, is a common, normal experience to go through, but to flow through, I will say, meaning that in feeling those feelings, we want to confront them, we want to deal with them, we want to make sense of why am I depressed? And normally, if we look at it, it's because of the connection with the other person that life was built. So if there was so much shared experience, interest, to where that person may feel basically an identity crisis. Like there is a separation to where they don't know who they are anymore without that person. And it's hard to move on from that. And so that's why some people continue to experience a lot of what might be emotional distress, and signs of true mental health, which could be clinical like depression and anxiety because of these breakups. And you never know what a person may have experienced in that relationship that really tied them to that person. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I found out something recently that there's this thing called heartbreak syndrome. And it affects a lot of people, whether they are coming out of a breakup or they lost someone to death. I have been seeking therapy over the past couple of weeks. And one of my therapists told me that going through heartache and going through a heartbreak with someone that you spent a lot of time with and that you fell in love with, it do feel like a death. It do feel like you lost somebody to death. And that's how I felt over the past few months before I met my therapist. And lately, I've been getting a lot of clarity about myself, who I am, why the relationship ended the way that it did. You know, you have people that change. That's another thing too, to add on to the conversation. You have people that change like the seasons. And when people change, they want more than what they have. So that's the reality of things. But I for one am still dealing with it. And you know, Sha'ria, you know, me and you, we also talked offline as well. Sha'ria knows the journey, Calishea. Sha'ria knows the journey that I've been on since last year with my breakup, and so do you, Calishea. And I appreciate both of you all for being there for me as well. But you know, still going through it. I'm still going through it, and it's something. And I just want to encourage listeners that find this show relatable, or find this particular episode relatable. It's not something that's going to last forever. It will get better. It definitely will get better. To echo what Sha'ria just said, it takes time. It's easy for somebody to come up to you and say, oh, you know, just get over it. You'll be all right. No, like my therapist said, it's just like getting over a death, getting over somebody that died. You know, so it just takes time. It is a loss.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to say this in terms of, you said the heartbreak syndrome. Just for listeners out there, that is not a diagnosis of any sort. It's just saying that in terms of what Sean is saying, is that is the grief. That when we have heartache, it really feels so painful that it's a loss. And any of us, including myself, you know, feeling that pain, emotional pain can feel worse than physical. It truly can. And so, just as I like to equate really processing our emotion like digesting food. And just like you have to chew it, it has to go through your throat, it has to go to the esophagus, down the stomach. We have to digest our emotions. They have to be processed. We have to understand, well, you know, why am I feeling like this? What is it that I'm going through? And, you know, with Sean, and I don't have a problem sharing my personal background as well, because sometimes it's important to disclose, because we're all human and we've been through it. And, you know, even for myself, and that's why I'm able to relate more to my clients and just people in general, because I understand the pain of a breakup, of what was a divorce for me. But it was important for me to go through, because it was no longer conducive to my personal growth, but it didn't take away the pain of it. It didn't take away the emotions of needing to, as you all are, be by myself and really develop all of what I needed for me to then go back out, adjust to the world, because that's only necessary and common that we experience that and go through that.
Absolutely. Tonight's theme is getting over your ex and making time for something new. Speaking of making time for something new, or for somebody new, Calishea, what have you made time for recently? Of course, coming out of the 2-year relationship that you was in. Hobbies, let's talk about them. Were you able to pick up any hobbies, any new hobbies that you haven't had a chance to explore lately? Or, you know, what hobbies would you like to explore if you haven't explored those hobbies already?
Actually, I haven't, because yeah, like my life revolved around him. Maybe definitely networking more. Well, everything that I did in a relationship, I did when I was single as well. So just because I was with him, it didn't stop anything, because, you know, he had his vision of what he wanted to do in his, as far as his career as well. But, you know, the same thing that I did, you know, in the relationship, I still do as well. But, you know, to make myself feel better, even though this may not even be worth, you know, saying, but I'm looking for a fun vehicle. I want to get me a new vehicle. So that'll somewhat make me feel a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I
Therapy
love
is what they
that.
call it.
Uh-huh.
I said shopping therapy is what they call it.
That's what it is. Clothes and therapy. Well, yes.
Yeah.
You know, Sha'ria, thank you. Yep. Therapy. Therapy is amazing.
Mhm.
I just want to buy up the whole store. It makes me feel
Wow.
yeah.
Be
You gonna
careful
buy?
with that.
I know. I'm a thrifter, so I'm a thrifter.
Okay, there you
All
go.
right.
I am curious too, Calishea, in terms of where you are in your process and understanding again, letting go of your past relationship and adjusting to the new and moving forward with that is there are adjustments that we have to make. And like you said, just you never really stop doing what you do and enjoying it, but you are getting into just shopping and just enjoying yourself. And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. In terms of the adjustment period, and looking at what you value, if anything has changed in terms of your beliefs in this
Not
stage, what would that be for you?
as far as my beliefs. Has anything changed?
Yeah. Has there been any change in terms of what you value and what are your beliefs in this stage for yourself?
I, honestly, nothing really has changed though.
Mhm.
That's what the most that I can say, that I feel as though nothing really has changed besides, feeling depressed and hurt, honestly,
Mhm.
because it was kind of wild that I didn't want to go through the pain or hurt anymore, because I've done that before in the beginning process with him, because he's hurt me, and of course I've hurt him as well, his feelings. And it was just to the point, Sha'ria, that I cried myself to sleep, and one morning my eyes were really, really swollen, but this go around I didn't want to experience that pain or hurt. And I prayed really, really, hard that night, and was like, God, I really don't want this pain anymore. I just want to get through it. And then it was just like a blink of an eye, no kidding, that it seemed like the pain was gone, but my feelings will always still be there. But it was just like my pain and my hurt actually was really, really gone. And it was just, wow, because that's never happened before. But I can honestly say that my pain and hurt was gone. And I just have to live with the fact that, maybe me and this gentleman may not be together. We may reconnect. But honestly, that was like one of the main things that I wanted to get rid of, was the pain and the hurt, because it's not a good feeling. Like crying yourself to sleep, not eating. I didn't eat for a whole week. Honestly,
Wow.
which was not healthy at all. Yeah, I was really, really small. Yep. I did not eat for a week. I just cried every day, honestly.
Mm.
It's just
Grieving
crazy
process.
how much of an impact that an individual have over you. And it's so crazy.
Yeah.
It is very common, and that's the impact of how someone can be on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to hear that you said, just in terms of your values and beliefs, that there hasn't really been much change. But if you look back in terms of when you were in that relationship, what did you notice any of your values that in that imbalance, and being where you are now, and even when you're ready for the new relationship, what was the imbalance in terms of the values or
My
beliefs that weren't in alignment?
I would say like my self-worth was gone. Like I didn't, it's just like my self-worth as a woman was actually gone, because I'm like, as a woman, what woman would want to put up with something like this? But it's just like you gave the benefit of the doubt each time, like, oh no, he'll be better. But what I would say is, my self-worth as a woman, because I've never been through a situation like that, because it's just seemed like the time I let my guard down, this is the effect that I get. But the imbalance came when he just wasn't ready, and that's kind of like a stab right there. So, but I just still stuck around. Honestly, I did. And it's kind of crazy. But it was just how I felt about him.
Well, it's not crazy because as human beings, we want to see the potential in people and we want to there's a saying that as women, we want the man to change. And as women, as men, they want us to stay the same. So it's that opposite. That's just a cliche thing, but actually, if you talk to or you poll both genders, we will find that commonality does exist. So no, you're not crazy for that, definitely at all.
Yeah, and I want to reply back to what you just said, Sha'ria. Like I noticed that I have changed in the relationship that I was in with my ex, and she changed as well too. She's not like the same person that I met 2-3 years ago. You know what I mean? But I think it's also important too. Like it's a possibility that both parties can make it work if they change together. That's how you build.
That's growth.
And make things growth, right? Maturity. You know, and like Calishea, if the universe does the way that it does, maybe me and my ex could reconnect in a different form of fashion. But, you know, at the same time, my mindset right now, it of course needs to be focused on this platform, other endeavors that I do in my professional life, but also seeing what the universe has to offer to me, or seeing what the universe has to offer to Calishea and to people out there that have experienced a breakup and coming out of a relationship. It's definitely devastating. We all go through it. We all go through some form of heartbreak. But we use moments in the past that we went through as teachable moments. I said this in a previous podcast. We didn't come with manuals. We didn't come to this earth with manuals. We just learn as we go, and we learn as we grow. Yeah. So, Calishea, we only have a few minutes left right here on the Love and Poetry podcast. And I spoke about making time. What are you going to do differently if you do meet this new person, or if you and your ex reconnect? What are you going to do differently that you didn't do in your previous relationships or in your past when it comes to making time, or just other things that come along with a relationship?
First, you'll catch those red signs early on, and I didn't catch it in the beginning because I really, really like this guy. You know, just catching those, seeing the signs and stuff. And another thing too, you know how the saying is when it comes to spending time with each other, because with an individual, is just like people will make time who they want to make time for.
Absolutely.
That's like the main saying, like people make time for who they want to make time for. And that's another thing too. So it's just like just seeing the signs, catching the signs early on, and knowing your self-worth as an individual. And you know, because once you grow from the previous relationship, you're gonna learn more into the new one and the things that you're willing to take and not take.
Right, I definitely agree. And also meditation as well too. I think it's also important that both prayer and meditation goes both ways in a relationship. There's no problem in both parties meditating with each other in the same space, in the same room. There's gonna be times where you are gonna disagree, have arguments and what have you. You just need to reset. You just need to reset calmly and meditate. Get all those things off your chest, get all those things out your head and stuff, and just meditate, be one with nature. You know, go on certain trips together, go to the mountains, or go to trips. Like I recently went to Blue Ridge Mountains in Georgia. I went by myself, but the next trip that I go to, whether it's Blue Ridge or somewhere else, I don't want to go alone. I want to go with someone else. I want to go with whoever the universe, whoever God sends to me, together, and just be one with nature together. How about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Calishea, we really appreciate your time for just coming on Love and Poetry podcast and sharing your story and letting us know what you have been through and what you are looking forward to in the near future. And like I said, this show is designed for people to have more healthier relationships with others, to make themselves into a better person that they have been in the past for a better tomorrow. That's what it's all about. Sha'ria, do you have any parting words for Calishea?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Sean, I'd like
Sha'ria, go ahead.
to add something that's, and as we close on this this episode, getting over your ex and basically the process of moving on, moving forward. And I want to give something definitively of what we've been basically all talking about, from you, Sean, from Calishea and her experience, but putting it into a perspective that some our listeners can take away, and they can have something, as even if they weren't to go to therapy, that they are able to not stay stuck in a place that is, we can say, a dark place, where the depression is experienced. Is first accepting it. Oftentimes there's denial in the loss, in the heartache, and hard wanting to get back with your ex, wanting to work things out. Being able to accept that, hey, you know what, it didn't work out for a reason. We can get back with our exes, and it can be actually greater than it was before.
Yeah.
But being able to move through it, we have to accept that first. And a lot that we have talked about is the pain that we all know, the crying, like, how Calishea, you talked about where you didn't even eat for days. That was a deep depression that you were
Yeah.
in because of that grief that you experienced from the loss. And that is normal to go through. You don't want to get stuck in it, but we have to feel those emotions. We want to deal with them and know why they're coming up. So being able to process that pain and that grief is a normal process of getting over your ex. And lastly, when Sean says, about how, what are your hobbies? What are you doing? And in that space of just being to yourself, that's the adjustment phase. That's adjusting to the world again and being able to regain, who am I? Where am I now? The role that I played in this relationship, and maybe so close. Now, who do I identify with? What do I like again? And being able to reclaim that for yourself. And that moves us to that new phase of finding a way to really live without that relationship and
Yeah.
moving forward to something greater and something better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the process of getting over.
That was a
your
really
ex. Thank you.
That was a real good
reclaiming.
one.
I like that. I like that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully it can be
Yeah.
beneficial for many.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. I think a lot of listeners are going to take away from this podcast episode a moment of clarity, a moment of reflection, reflecting on the things that happened in the past and not really hang on to the past too long. But like I said earlier, just using it as teachable moments or teachable lessons to help yourself grow. Because I know in the past I've made some mistakes in previous relationships, not just only in the last relationship that I was in, but I also made mistakes as well in previous relationships. And as time goes by, as you get older and as you get wiser, you start to not do the same things that you was doing in your past because you've seen your past and you don't want to return to that place because you're not going to get the right result that you want to move forward. And you're going to find yourself being stuck in the past. It's all about creating a better tomorrow and a better future for yourself, for the person that you will be with, and communication. Communication is very important. Hey, listen, I didn't say this before, Sha'ria and Calishea, but communication also means having a working phone. Yeah, a working phone. Let me tell you. Let me tell you, I have come. I too. A phone that works, ladies and gentlemen. I have come across people who have, I don't want to say cheap phones, but phones that are not up to date, if you will. And that can also be a hindrance, or it can also render a relationship if you sending your boo or your bae 20 messages and your bae is like, why is he not hitting me up? Like, what's going on? What's going on with the communication? You know, y'all gotta be on the same page when it comes to phones. I'm just saying.
Well, your baby may not have the money to afford a new phone, Sean.
All right. Of course. And the right kind of service. The right kind of service, the right kind of plan.
That is true.
Hey, I'm just saying. Well, Calishea, good luck to you, best endeavors, and all that you do. And we would love to welcome you back on the podcast in the near future to give us some updates on where you at in your life when it comes to relationships. So we definitely appreciate you for taking time to speak to us today.
I'm sorry. Of course, yes, definitely. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And if you want to reach out to any of us, me or Sha'ria, we are open. We're here for you. So just hit us up. We are here for you.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
All right. You have a good night as well, Calishea. Sha'ria Thomas, where can people follow you at, Sha'ria?
Sean Garvey.
Hello, Sha'ria?
Social media. Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Yes, all your social outlets at I am Sha'ria Thomas, and also at sha'riathomas.com.
All right. And you can follow me on social media as well at Sean Garvey ATL on Twitter and on Instagram, Sean Garvey on Facebook. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can check out these episodes and more on demand, beatbreakradiofm.com, and on the podcast FM app. As we get ready to close out the show, we are going to close out with poet Rob Fields. He is a local poet, and he recently performed this piece at a local venue called You Are Beautiful. So we want to remind listeners and people tuning in that you are beautiful. So enjoy the wonderful sounds of Rob Fields, poet, and tune in again to another great episode of Love and Poetry with Sha'ria Thomas and Sean Garvey. Here to close the show out is Rob Fields. You all have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.